I would not be where I am today. I mean, I've made that money back tens of thousands of times over now. This is not what I do when I am a laundromat millionaire, but this is what I did to become a laundromat millionaire. But I never have stopped. Hey everyone, Dave Men's Laundromat Millionaire coming to you again from Cincinnati, Ohio. And I have a quite a bit different episode for you today. Today I'm flying solo. My beautiful wife, Carla, is not with us today. And we don't have a guest with us today. So today it's just going to be me and you. We're going to be talking. I've had some things on my mind, and I think you're going to really get a lot of value out of this episode. So I wanted to just talk to you, kind of me to you today, and see if we can bring you some value, see if we can help you out a lot. I really think that this episode is going to help a lot of people, as I've kind of been reflecting on my journey and how I got from 12 years ago in 2010 to where we are today with our laundromat empire, if you will, mini empire. So one of the things I'm going to talk to you about today is the top 3 things that made me a laundromat millionaire. I know that that moniker, if you will, that nickname is a little bit controversial, and I understand that. But the reality is that me and my wife Carla, we did start out many years ago without much money at all, and we have been able to become millionaires. In fact, multimillionaires through the laundromat industry. And there's many different things that go back into our success, as you can imagine. But what I really wanted to do is today for this episode, I just wanted to kind of hone in today on the top 3 things that I feel like made me a laundromat millionaire. If I had to just go back over my 12-year journey and pick 3 things that I feel like have really contributed the most to my success in the industry, what are those? And I want to dive into a little bit of them with you. And then the other thing is, I'm really excited. If you look behind me, if you're watching me on video, my new book, Laundromat Millionaire, The Grit to Elevate an Industry, is out. Right now, you can only buy it on my website, laundromatmillionaire.com. But over the next few months, you will be able to buy it in pretty much everywhere the bookstores are sold. So go check that out. It's kind of a teaching memoir that I wrote about my journey, and I think you'll get a lot of value out of that as well. So you can order that book today on my website, laundromatmillionaire.com. And for a limited time, this episode is coming out at the end of December 2021. For a limited time, if you order the book through my website, you're going to get an autographed copy that I'll sign personally. So if you're interested in that, go check it out. I really think it'll help you out a lot. Are you renovating your store or building a new one? Tired of persistent and expensive plumbing issues like I was? Get an HM Company drain trough to give those drain lines a fighting chance against the constant wear and tear of laundromat life. Sizing is fully customizable to meet your needs, and lead times are a maximum of 2 weeks. I've used them in my stores in Cincinnati for years, and I'm installing them in my new store, which is opening soon. Visit their website today at draintroughs.com and contact your distributor to order your drain trough today. All right. So here's the thing. As I said, the top 3 things that made me and my wife, Carla, laundromat millionaires. The first one that we're going to talk about in this episode today is that I have found and invested in fantastic mentors. I'll dive into it a little bit deeper as we go into this episode, but the quick version of it is, keep in mind that I said I found, which is not always easy to find, great mentors, but that I've also invested in. I've invested heavily in these relationships, and I'm going to talk about what that looks like and how you can do that for yourself. Number 2, I've always invested heavily in education. Even early on when I didn't have the time or the money to invest in my education, I did anyways. And I'm going to talk about that and what that looks like for you, depending on your journey, but what it looked like for me along my journey as well. And then number 3, the top 3 things that made me a laundromat millionaire. Number 3 is networking like crazy, but being genuine. I estimate today, as I'm doing this episode of the podcast, that I have around 500 laundromat owners' phone numbers and contact information in my phone. They would take my call today, and a lot of them do. They help me all the time, and many of them have many, many times. And obviously that means they have my number and they call me all the time, and I try to help them as well. That's what networking is in business. A lot of people misunderstand networking as just hanging out, eating food, drinking, socializing. How are the kids? And yes, that is a personal aspect to networking. But if you're networking with an intentionality, um, that's when it becomes really, really valuable. And the old saying, your network is your net worth. I've always believed that. And so I've invested heavily in my network over the years, but I've always been very genuine about it. I've never believed in networking from a sense of entitlement or from a place of, what would you call it? Manipulation. I don't know if that's a good word, but manipulation, meaning that I want to build a relationship with you, but I only want to do that because you have something that I want. That's not what I consider to be healthy networking. And that's why I added be genuine to the end of that. So, listen, I'm going to jump into this episode, but before I do, I haven't really made too many formal announcements about my conference that I have coming out. We have a new conference coming out that we just launched a few months ago. It's called the Laundromat Millionaire Conference. This is an in-person conference. It's going to be March 2nd through the 4th, 2022. That's right, coming up just in a couple months, depending on when you're listening to this episode. This is at the W Resort in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. So if you want to go to Fort Lauderdale and get away from the cold, uh, a good portion of the United States at the end of February, beginning of March is still going to be in the middle of winter. And we thought we'd get away for a few days. This is going to be an in-person networking and educational event. And this is part of the reason that I'm doing this episode, is because I've really been thinking a lot about how the value of those three things have helped me to be successful. And so I wanted to do this episode, but also if you haven't heard, I want you to know about the Laundromat Millionaire Conference. You can go to our website and get more information on that and register if you're interested. But we'll be there for a couple days in March, and I would love to meet you, get to know you. Obviously, I'll be doing some keynote speeches and things like that, trying to teach people. And some of my good friends, that network that I told you I've been building for 12 years, a lot of those people are going to be there as well. So if you're interested in that type of thing, come check it out. The fact of the matter is that as I've been planning for this conference, I've had a lot of time to kind of reflect on what these things were, these kind of top three, top five things that have made me successful. And even though I started with nothing back in the beginning, if you don't know that, me and Carla, when we got in the business a long time ago, we didn't have any money. We had to save up for about 5 years before we bought our first laundromat. And how we got to where we are today, these are the three things. And as I've thought about this conference, it's kind of been on my heart to put this on, to bring value to our industry, to just give people another opportunity to learn and network and educate each other, and build relationships. I've thought about these things more and more every day. And so I kind of wanted to break them down for you. So whether you attend the Laundromat Millionaire Conference or not, the reality is these three things, if you listen to this episode and take notes, there's going to be, I think, a lot of value that'll help you be successful. If you're the type of person that is either feels they're already at the top of the industry, but wants to continue to strive and improve, or if you're not there yet, but that's a goal of yours, is you want to someday be a top operator in the laundromat industry. This is how I did it. This is how a lot of my friends have done it as well. So anyway, let's dive right into it. So as I mentioned, number one was I found great mentors. And I talked about the fact that I've invested in those mentors. Here's the thing. I've told people that many times. I've told people that, look, I've had some amazing mentors in my business journey. And I hear all the time, well, I'm really lucky. I'm really lucky that I found a good mentor, multiple good mentors. And there is some truth to that. Obviously, there is a factor of luck that kind of goes into the equation. But here's the thing I want you to know. I searched far and wide to find my mentors. I have many of them. And I search far and wide for those. And I encourage you to invest the time and the money, quite frankly, travel expenses, things like that. Going to a conference like mine, there's a registration associated with that. You have to stay in a hotel unless you're local. If you go to the Clean Show, which I'll talk about in a bit, all these things have a value associated with them, but they also have an investment associated with them. And so what I like to tell people is, yes, I have a lot of mentors that have helped guide me over the years, But make no mistake, I didn't just roll out of bed one day and have great mentors. I invested heavily in those things. And so if you listen to what I'm saying is that having great mentors is important to have. And you may nod your head and agree with me that, yes, I agree, having great mentors is amazing. And Dave, you're really lucky you have some. And what I'm telling you is that if you're intentional and you make the investment in both time and money in searching out the best in the industry, that you can have those people in your life too. And they absolutely do. That does pay off in spades. So let's dive into a couple things of the type of mentors that you might want to look for. One of the things that I always did is I was always looking for someone that was actively or recently doing the things that I wanted to do. So I wasn't just looking for someone that randomly was successful in the vending business or the real estate business. Now, those people are smart, very successful. If you get a time to, get an opportunity to rub shoulders with them, I recommend you do that. Take them out to lunch, get to know them. But what I'm really talking about in this case is industry specific mentors that either are actively doing or have very recently done what you're looking to do. So a hypothetical would be if you're in the laundromat business and you kind of feel like you're maybe middle of the road, then you don't want to listen to people that are middle of the road. You want to listen to people that are where you're going or have recently been where you're going. And that's something that's important to look for in a mentor. And that can help you kind of narrow down those things. Now, sometimes you don't know those things until you spend a lot of time with somebody, but those are the type of things that you're looking for. And then the flip side of that is keep in mind to always be giving back as well. Here's another thing I want you to understand. I've had a lot of mentors over the years. I've had many, many, many mentors. I still do. I joke all the time that I estimate I've had roughly 10,000 mentors or coaches in my life, and 999,000 of them don't, or 9,999 of them don't know who I am. What I mean by that too is a mentor isn't always someone that you have a personal relationship with. Those are the best types of mentors for sure that will invest in you. You invest in them at a high level, and sometimes a very intimate level. But the reality is, I've had many, many people that I consider mentors that had great podcasts that I listened to, and newsletters and magazines that I subscribe to, and things like that. So there's many different types of mentors out there, and you really can't have too many, but it is something that requires an investment on your part. So keep that in mind. I want to tell you a quick story about how I met my mentor, Steve Millman. Steve Millman is an HM equipment distributor. He was the owner of HM Company, which is my Hipsch equipment distributor here in Cincinnati. Here's the story, because I hear people say I was lucky all the time, and I want them to know what I did to find and build the relationship with Steve that I have to this day. So the quick version of the story is I found a laundromat for sale. I never dreamed of owning a laundromat before. This is back in like late 2009. And once I did a very small amount of due diligence on this store, one of the things I learned very quickly is that I was going to need to find someone that really knew the nuts and bolts of the industry, not the customer service, not the strategy, those types of things, but really the nuts and bolts of the mechanicals of the store. And I knew that that would be an equipment distributor. And so what I started doing is searching everywhere I could find back in 2009, before I even owned a laundromat. And I was searching for what I felt was a rock star equipment distributor that could help me. And I didn't know they would become a mentor. I didn't know if they would charge me for these services. I knew nothing about nothing. All I knew was I needed them, and I needed to be able to add them to my network, and I needed to build a relationship with them. And so what I did is I didn't want to just approach them blindly, which I think a lot of people make the mistake to do. Just go in and say, found this laundromat for sale. I want you to invest in me and help make me successful. What I did instead is I put together a pretty thorough business plan. Now, I knew I didn't know the business. I knew there was holes in my plan, so to speak. But I had done a lot of homework. I had done a lot of due diligence on the store, the competitive analysis of the area, whether this would be successful or not. I had read and researched a lot over just a few weeks, not a long period of time. I had invested heavily in some different courses that I had bought. And back then, I don't know that podcasts were really a thing, but I bought books and magazines and anything I could really get my hands on, white papers. things like that. What I did is I put together a plan for how I would run this store. And then I reached out to all the equipment distributors in the greater Cincinnati area, and I had a phone call with them. And I said, hey, this is who I am. This is what I'm looking to do. I don't know what I'm doing. This is kind of my rough plan over the phone. I was wondering if I could set up a meeting with you to come in and talk to you face to face. And some of them were, believe it or not, I thought it was kind of crazy. Some of them weren't super ambitious about setting up a meeting with me and me taking up their time. They wanted to just talk to me over the phone and kind of felt like they wanted to vet me over the phone, which I understood why, but I wanted someone that had a bigger picture mentality of our relationship than something like that. And so a good portion of the equipment distributors that I called on, I don't know if they intentionally did it or if they knew they were doing it, but I felt like they kind of blew me off. And so I kind of put them, I didn't blow them off. I just put them the bottom of the list. And one distributor really stood out to me, and it was HM Company. I talked to Steve Millman on the phone for a pretty short period of time. I told him quickly what I was looking to do, that I had found a store I was looking to buy. I told him a little bit about it. He had an idea of what I was looking at doing. I gave him a very quick synopsis on me and who I was and my financial position and things like that without going too deep. And he quickly agreed. He was like, yeah, I would love to talk to you. That would be amazing. And so I think it was the next day or 2 days later, we set up a meeting for me to go in and talk to him. And I went to meet with him right after work because I had a full-time job. And long story short, we sat there in that office that night. He closed the doors, he locked the doors to the business, and he and I stayed in there and talked after closing for a couple hours. The reason that he did that and that he invested that time in me is because within a very short period of time, he saw two things. One of them is that he saw that I had a passion that was very unique to this industry. He had been in this industry for over 20 years at that point, and he's told me this since then, that he saw that I had a passion and enthusiasm that he didn't see in too many people that were either getting into the industry or even people that were in the industry. And he thought that was very unique. The other thing was he saw that I had a plan. It might not have been a bulletproof plan or even a great plan, to be honest, but I had a plan, meaning I wasn't expecting him to solve all my problems. I just wanted him to fill in the gaps. And I wanted him to point out to me kind of the red flags and the things that maybe I hadn't thought of, or those types of things. And he found that those two things really meant that I cared about my business, and he didn't want to mentor or coach or be in a relationship with somebody where he felt like he cared more about their business and their community than I did. And I don't blame him for that. The crazy thing is, fast forward to today, he and I have had a relationship for many years. I've probably bought over $3 million in equipment from him, maybe more than that, not even counting service work that they do, parts departments, vending machines, other things other than washers and dryers and changers and things like that. But the fact of the matter is, the relationship has paid off in spades for him and me both, because he made a bet on me that I was going to be quote unquote worth his time. But the thing you have to understand is there was luck in finding him, so I'll give you that. But it was also very strategic because I knew what I was looking for, at least a type of person. I had done my homework. I didn't want to approach the relationship and say, give, give, give. I said, what I did is I approached him and I said, I know I need some help. I know I don't know this industry well, but let me tell you who I am and what I'm going to do to make sure that this is a win-win relationship. Is when I need service, I'm going to come to you all. When I need parts, when I need equipment, I'm going to come to you all. But I don't know that yet. So I need to learn these things. And here's my plan. The quick version is I laid out for him a plan of how I was going to buy the store, finance the store, how I was going to operate the store, how I was going to keep my full-time job for many years so I could reinvest, how I was going to operate the store, that my wife was going to do the accounting, and I was going to run the day-to-day operations. And I eventually wanted to have attendance and things like that. So my point is that having a mentor or many, many mentors is very, very important. You really can't have too many, whether it's someone whose book you just bought and you never meet them and you never know them personally. But they're a mentor to you in a different kind of way, meaning they're providing you with either coaching or resources through a website or a podcast or a book or things like that. Maybe you do attend their conference like I'm putting on, and you do get to know them a little more personally. That's amazing too. But the point is that without Steve Millman and that relationship, and without my relationship with an amazing equipment distributor, and without all these other relationships, these mentors that I've built relationships with over time, I would not be where I am today. I'm 100% certain of that. And so, what I want you to understand is the value of something like that. The two key points is one, you got to find the right ones. You got to let them know that you are willing to put in the time and effort, that you are willing to work harder than them. You don't expect them to do the work. You're just looking for guidance. And the other thing is, you need to build a relationship where they understand there's something in it for them too, because otherwise you're just a taker. And the fact of the matter is, there aren't too many people in this world that are so giving that they will allow someone else to just take, and never reciprocate. I mean, nobody wants a marriage like that. Nobody wants a friendship like that. And nobody wants a business partnership like that. So I hope that makes sense to you. But that's kind of the brief synopsis of number one. So number two, I told you, is that I invested heavily in education. And to be honest with you, I did this from day one, or even negative day one, because I was spending money and time and resources in my education and my knowledge and those types of things on books and podcasts and magazines before I ever even closed on my first store. I bought those things as a way of doing due diligence to see if I wanted to buy this laundromat that I had found on Craigslist for sale. And I could have invested, hundreds, if not thousands of dollars in these things and decided this wasn't for me and backed out of the deal. And to be honest with you, before I got into the laundromat business, there were many, many industries where I found those situations. And I did invest hundreds, if not sometimes thousands of dollars into researching an industry or getting to know people that might, sell restaurant equipment or what have you, to see if that was an industry that I wanted to get into. The thing I want you to remember is that I never have stopped. I still to this day invest heavily in my education. And I think that's important for people to understand, because it's very easy for people to understand, oh, in the beginning, when I know nothing, I need to invest in my education and read books and podcasts and attend conferences and trade shows and things like that and get to know people. But then once I get to a point where I'm successful, then I can just kind of pull back and just kind of ride the coattails of my success. If you do that, what will happen is you will find that lack of humility and that lack of hunger will eventually come to bite you. Now, it might be 10, 20 years from now, but it will come back to bite you, because every month or every year or every quarter, what'll happen is the industry will slowly evolve and change, and you won't, because when you become disengaged from that education and that hunger, that passion for being successful, the industry is passing you by, because every industry is always changing. So here's the thing: I invested in my education heavily from day one, but I never have stopped, and I never will stop. A few things I want you to remember, though, when it comes to my education and me investing. Now, I invested in my education as far as a time commitment, and that's important to do. I also invested heavily, and continue to, from a financial commitment. There's a lot of free resources out there, and some of them are pretty good. But my experience has been over the years that most of those free resources are worth about what you pay for them. You might find few little nuggets in there that you can kind of pick out, but as a general rule, most of the free information on the internet, on the industry, is put out by manipulative equipment distributors. And I'm not saying all equipment distributors are that way, by the way, just the bad ones. And equipment manufacturers that are putting out information, trying to attract people to the industry, trying to convince them that this is a passive business and all you got to do is collect your money and all these different things. And the problem is, when those are the people or organizations that you're looking for your education, then they're gonna lead you where they want to lead you versus what's most successful for you. Now, sometimes those resources can be tremendous. So I'm not here to put a bad light on all free information. I mean, this podcast, for example, is free for you to consume. It doesn't cost you anything other than your time. It doesn't cost money. And the thing you have to remember is back when I got in the industry, and before I even got in the industry, I was already investing from a personal time standpoint, which is an investment, but I was also investing from a monetary standpoint. I was investing money in buying magazines and buying books and attending conferences and things like that. I was doing that before I even got into the industry. And I found that they were tremendous resources for me. And that's how I met a lot of the people that I met. But it's also how I consumed a lot of content going to the Clean Show. And I saw and still see to this day those things to be very, very valuable. So the thing I want you to remember is that I did those things when I didn't really have the money to do it. But I did it because I believed it was in my best interest long term. And yes, sometimes that meant sacrificing in other ways. I know you've heard the term work on your business versus working in your business. And what a lot of people forget in that little phrase is that it's really important to do both. It's important to work in your business until you can work on your business. But even once you can work on your business, meaning strategy, vision, team building, things like that, there's always times where you have to balance still working in your business, even if it's just for short periods of time. And my point is that the same thing applies when it comes to balancing investing in your education and in your business. And early on, I almost, and I'm glad I didn't, but I almost fell into this trap of, oh well, if I don't spend this $2,000 or $3,000 on this conference or this clean show, then what I can do instead is take that money and invest it in my business. And what I'm trying to point out to you is I didn't always do that. And I believe that that's the second reason that I found a tremendous amount of success. I understand as a small business owner that it's common to think that it's always better to put money in your business versus working on your education. But what I'm telling you is it's a balancing act. And so I'm not saying not to spend 90% of your money on those things, but whatever resources you have available to you, you should always be investing some of that into your education. The reason I put on the Laundromat Millionaire Conference, for example, is because our industry doesn't have enough of these types of events, in my opinion, that just give people options and choices. And I want you to understand that I know it's really easy for you to look at me now and say, well, yeah, of course you spend money on these things. You're a millionaire. And my message to you is that that's what I did to become a millionaire. It's not what I did once I was a millionaire. It's how I became a millionaire. So how is that? Why would I say something like that? It's not to get you to come to my conference, because if you can't afford it, I don't want you to stress yourself out too much. The reason I say that is, let's say hypothetically you spend $50,000 in your business. Isn't it better to have the right education before you make those decisions? Which equipment to buy, which vending machines to buy, if any, or do you outsource your vending? Do you buy your own ATM, or do you buy a card system for your store? What makes the most sense? It's always better to have the education first and then make decisions. I know a good portion of you out there listening to this episode right now probably have reached a certain amount of success. And there was a time where I did that, where I had reached a certain level of success. And I don't think that I ever reached that point where I lost my humility, my ability to learn. But what I did do is I came really close a few times. A few times I came close to thinking that, well, this industry isn't that hard. I've got it all figured out. And there's two things to that. One of them is you don't ever have anything all figured out. Trust me, you don't. The other thing is, even if you did, things are always changing. And so you always have to be digging deep into the industry. And the deepest places to go in this industry are these types of educational conferences and networking events, whether it's local meetups, equipment distributor trade shows, things like that, the Clean Show, the Laundromat Millionaire Conference, these types of things. You have to always be digging with those things for education. And then now I want to talk about the third one, which is the networking aspect. Networking is the lifeline to advancing your education. So the networking and the education, they go hand in hand, and you have to understand that and you have to treat them that way. So here's a few different examples of what I mean by that. These are the types of networking events that I always invested in heavily. One of them is outside entrepreneurship events. Now, this may surprise you because I've learned that 80 to 90% of all business lessons are the same from industry to industry. And I didn't always know that. I kind of just had an aha moment many years ago where I was like, hey, I just had lunch with a friend of mine that's a restaurant owner. We were talking business and strategy and pricing and things. And what I found is that I personally learned a ton from networking with business owners that are not in the laundromat industry. You can learn a ton from people. I attend conferences on marketing. They're obviously not specific to the laundromat industry, but guess what? I always learn things that make me wiser about running my business from a marketing perspective. And you just take those lessons and you pull them back into your industry and say, how do those things apply to you? Talked about it quite a bit already, but the Clean Show. The reason I bring this up is because this is the premier biennial trade show for our industry, and we partner with the dry cleaning industry. At the time this is being produced in December, our next Clean Show is going to be in the summer of 2022. And I would love to see you there. But here's the thing, it's not always easy for us, but as best you can, I want you to never turn down a chance to meet someone. The reason I say that is because I have very rarely done that. Now, have I, went to one-on-one lunches or coffee or breakfast, or even invested heavily in going to a conference and found that it wasn't worth my time or money or effort? Yes, I have. And I want to give you an example of how attending any of these shows, but specifically the Clean Show, really moved the needle for me. Because a trade show, a lot of people think it's just a bunch of booths. You walk around, you see some equipment, you're probably going to buy it either way. Whatever your distributor tells you to buy, and they don't see a lot of value in the Clean Show. Yeah, the conferences are a little different, and I'll talk about those in a second. But I want to share another story with you real quick. So back in 2015, I attended the Clean Show, which I did. I did every chance I could. I think since I got in the industry, I've only missed one. And what ended up happening is I was walking around. The Clean Show is a 4-day event. On the third day, back in 2015, I walked up to a random booth and it had a whole bunch of people around it and a guy with a laptop. And this guy was talking about pickup and delivery. And, I know it may not seem funny to you now because pickup and delivery is so common, but back then, there was really no one doing this other than a few people in the bigger cities. And that's about it. And even how do I say it? It wasn't really a big revenue stream. It was more of a ancillary revenue stream, I guess you would say. And I just listened to this guy talk for a while about pickup and delivery. And I already had 4 stores. I just acquired my 4th store. And one of the things that I had learned before I went to the Clean Show is, man, over the last 5 or 6 years, I've invested heavily in buying 4 rundown laundromats, borrowed a whole bunch of money to fix them up and make them really nice, modernized laundromats. And what I realized is that my income potential had kind of started to cap out. And the reason that it had is because you can only drive so many self-serve customers into the stores. But I had borrowed all this money for equipment and infrastructure and everything. And so I was looking for new revenue streams. And one of the things is I stood in that booth for about 3 or 4 hours on that third day of the Clean Show. And I listened to the guy talk about pickup and delivery. Specifically, this gentleman was talking about his software that he had kind of created for himself to run pickup and delivery. And what ended up happening is I left the Clean Show that day and I realized that pickup and delivery laundry service was maybe our industry's next big milestone. But I believed for me, it definitely was. And I left the conference that day, or the Clean Show that day, with a very pivotal thing. Now, the reason I tell you this story is because I did not go to the Clean Show knowing anything about pickup and delivery. I had heard about it a few times and always said it wasn't something I wanted anything to do with, ironically. And after talking with that gentleman that day for several hours and talking to a bunch of other people in the industry about drop-off laundry and things like that, and how to scale them, I realized that this was the future for me. and that I would probably still buy and own and operate other laundromats down the road and build, but that I was interested in pickup and delivery. Now, look, if pickup and delivery isn't for you and you're getting bored hearing me talk about this, that's fine. What's the lesson in this story? The lesson in this story is if I hadn't attended the clean show, I wouldn't have gotten that information. I really believe that. I probably wouldn't have gotten it anywhere else. And if I hadn't gotten that information, I wouldn't have dove into the pickup and delivery game. And to this day, one of my stores, if I weren't doing pickup and delivery, would be generating about $300,000 a year in revenue with about 30% margins in self serve business and a little bit of drop off laundry. Instead, because I run pickup and delivery out of that store does over $1 million a year in dry cleaning, drop off laundry, self serve, and pickup and delivery. And the pickup and delivery is just growing leaps and bounds every year. And so what has happened is that investment of, let's call it $4,000 or $5,000 maybe, that I invested in plane tickets, hotels, and my time, and the tickets for the clean show and things like that. I mean, I've made that money back tens of thousands of times over now by getting into pickup and delivery. Now, was it easy? No, because getting the information, getting the education is the easy part. Executing and staying the course and figuring out a way to be successful is different. But my point is this: if we're not always around people in our either in our network or just random acquaintances that are challenging us and challenging each other and driving the industry forward, then we're not going to find these opportunities. And when I go to the clean show, I attend the educational sessions and things like that. And I'm always challenged by the keynote speakers and the expert panels and different ways of doing things. A lot of times I walk away saying, I'm not going to do at all what that guy or girl does. But a lot of times I do find myself considering things. And even if I don't take the course that they took, a lot of times I'll take a little bit different version of that. And it just helps me to accelerate, grow, and challenge myself to be better tomorrow than I was yesterday. So the next thing I want to talk about is conferences. So I talked about the trade shows. I talked about outside entrepreneurship events outside our industry. Another one is industry specific conferences. I just got back a couple months ago, not even a couple months ago, from the Elevate conference, which was just a networking conference that the CLA put on, and it was incredibly valuable to me. It was incredibly valuable to me because I reinforced relationships I already had. I invested in those. I talked to people. I hope I helped a bunch of people. I think I did by being on a panel and stuff. But I also got a lot of value in return from other people because I made new friendships, new relationships, and I learned a lot from the other panels. And more importantly, I expanded my network. I now have people in my network that I didn't have before. And I've even had personal conversations with them where we've talked about intimate things about business since that conference. There's other ones that the Elevate is kind of a new thing the CLA just did. I don't know if they'll continue to do that. That was kind of a networking thing. They do the Excellence in Laundry, which I've attended in the past, and that's typically held in the off year of the clean show. As I mentioned at the beginning of this podcast, I've launched my own conference, the Laundromat Millionaire Conference, in 2022. It's going to be in March, 2nd through the 4th of 2022 in Fort Lauderdale. But my plan is to do these every year. So I don't know where it will be in 2023. We'll figure that out down the road, but we do plan on doing these every year. I mentioned earlier that I had over 500, and that's a rough estimate of laundromat owners' names and numbers and emails and contacts in my phone. I made these investments and spent a lot of money and a lot of time, and many of these relationships have and continue to pay off in spades. Now, the cool thing about it is I've just made a lot of friends with some really good people, and that's awesome too. But I don't attend networking events just to make friends. I consider that gravy on top. I'm there for the education and I'm there for the networking. But the thing you have to remember is when you attend these type of events, you have to also be looking to give. I talked about it a minute ago. You can't just be a taker. So remember that. Always be looking to give first at these events. Because if you're a taker, then you're not going to get as much value out of the events because other people know that you're just there to use them, but you're not there to actually network and be a part of a community. So keep that in mind, whether you're I hope you're able to attend my events in the future. We're putting a lot of time and effort and money into them to making sure that there's a ton of value. But if you can't attend mine this year, maybe next year. If not, make sure you're attending these other events. A couple more categories under the networking side that I want to hit before we go today. One of them is local events, and these are fairly common, and these don't require usually much, if any, monetary investment, just a little bit of time. You can visit other stores. You can find just a specific, just one laundromat owner, like you're in Cincinnati, I'm in Cincinnati. You reach out to them, give them a call, take them to lunch. And if you're the one initiating these, just as a little tip, if you're the one initiating these, be very intentional about who you're networking with and who you will and what you'll do is you'll frequently find different trade shows and events of different kinds in your area. Maybe industry specific, maybe not. Maybe it's a one-on-one type of lunch where you offer to treat them to lunch and just tell them you just want to get to know them and talk shop. Maybe have a specific question, like you wonder if their laundromat's for sale, or you wonder if they want to buy your laundromat. But once again, going to it with a giving heart. Have the heart of a giver first, and you'll find that that'll come back to you 10 times over. Couple other things before I let you go today, and I'm wrapping it up. So I appreciate you hanging in there with me. Another one is networking online. There's a lot of different networking events online. There's different forums and groups broken into different categories. There's ones on Facebook and on, the CLA's forum and Laundromat Resource. I personally have a group that's free. You're welcome to join it if you're on Facebook. It's a Facebook group. Just go into the search on Facebook, type in Laundromat Millionaire Owners Group, and it's totally free. Nothing. The only thing we ask is that if you're going to join the group, that you be a giver. Have what I call an abundance mindset. If you're on Facebook, I'd love for you to join me. And the crazy thing is, I just started that group not even a year ago, and we're approaching 1,500 laundromat owners that are on that group. And there's a lot of knowledge and information on there. It's not just me anymore. There's a lot of really smart, wise people that have different perspectives and angles on things. But the good thing about a networking group like the Laundromat Millionaires Owners Group on Facebook is it's free. So I highly recommend it. The last thing is that there are local owner meetups that are happening more and more. And I think these are super cool. They're not overly sophisticated. Usually it's just a group of 3 or 4, maybe 10 or 15, maybe sometimes a little bit more than 10 or 15 laundromat owners. And it'll just someone will take the initiative, put together a Facebook group or an email chain or a text or whatever. You invite 3 people, I invite 3 people. Next thing you know, there's 20 people just getting together for a couple hours for lunch. And these things are popular in many industries. I just got invited to go down to Louisville, Kentucky, a couple hours from here and speak at a real estate investors meetup. And what they do is 2 people organize it. They put the whole thing together. They meet up once a month. They're at the same place. They get hors d'oeuvres and drinks and snacks. They always have a topic they talk about for a half hour, 45 minutes, and then they just network and chat and get to know each other. But these things are springing up all over the place in the laundromat industry, and I think it's super cool. I've been to a few of them, and I think it's really great. They're not that sophisticated. They're usually free or very little cost to attend. But if you can find those in your area, they're very valuable to do. Now, you might say, well, where would I find something like that? Once again, it goes back to networking. The more conversations you have, the more groups you're in, the more you build a relationship with your equipment distributor, different things like that. And you just ask, you literally just have conversations. Hey, you live in Cincinnati. Do you know of anything like this out there? And what I always tell people is, if there's not anything like that out there, maybe you should be the one that should organize it. Might just start with 1 or 2 people, that get together at first, and then it compounds. Maybe you do it every once a quarter, and maybe you get so many people there that now you break it down into monthly. Maybe you charge a small fee and it goes towards the food, or you pay an outside speaker to come in, or something like that. There's no rhyme or reason to what you do. But the point of this whole episode today is that I hope you get out of this is a couple things. The 3 things that I talked about today were that I found a tremendous amount of value, and I credit a tremendous amount of success to 3 things: to finding and investing in great mentors, which is plural. A mentor is not always one person, plural. Number two, I've always invested heavily in education. And yes, that does mean a financial investment at times. I've always done that, even when I thought that maybe it wasn't the right move for me. And I've never once regretted it. And then the last one is network like crazy and be genuine. I have those 500 laundromat owners' names and numbers in my phones that'd take my call today, and they'll help me. And many of them have on many ways. Why? Why would they do that? The reason that they do that is I've probably helped them somewhere along the way. Or maybe I haven't helped them, but maybe I've helped their friend or their neighbor, and they know that I'm not a taker, I'm a giver. Networking is a powerful thing, but networking is not just about socializing. It's about giving value to others, whether you're in an online group, a conference, like the Laundromat Millionaire conference, whatever it is, go into those opportunities and say, I want to look for an opportunity to give first. And I know that eventually it will come back to me full circle. So I don't know if all this makes sense to you guys, but I really just kind of had it on my heart this week for this episode. And I hope that it'll bring you a lot of value. And as I mentioned before, if I don't get to see you at the Laundromat Millionaire Conference this year or even next year, I hope that I get to meet you someday at the Clean Show or at the Elevate events or maybe at a local meetup group. If you have local meetup groups in your area and you want to post those things on the Laundromat Millionaire Owners Group on Facebook, that's my personal group. I'm giving you permission to do that. So feel free to post on there. If you're looking for something like that, post on that Facebook group and say, hey, I live in Houston, Texas. Does anybody know of any local meetups in Houston, Texas? And I think you'd be really surprised how anxious our industry is to connect and get together. Not everybody, but a lot of people are. And when you connect with those people, I think you're going to find that it's going to take your business, your network, the power of your network, and your education and your inspiration even to another level, just like it has mine. So my hope for today is that you get a lot of value out of this episode, that you understand that this is not what I do when I am a laundromat millionaire, but this is what I did to become a laundromat millionaire. So I hope that makes sense to you. I hope you get a lot of value out of this. And until next week, I'll see you guys later. Take care.